Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1121.
I like to break a big project. We all want to see the final product, but I like to break it into small mini projects. And it's kind of like eating an elephant, one bite at a time.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Greene is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, automotive enthusiasts. I'm revved up and so excited to introduce today's very special guest, Tom Perazzo. Hey, Tom, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
Yes, sir. Buckled up and ready to roll.
All right. Tom Perazzo is a Porsche enthusiast who enjoys wrenching on old cars as much as he loves driving them. His passion to share his enthusiasm spurred him to launch a YouTube channel he calls Ahh Garage Time, where he shares his car restoration tips and tricks geared towards do-it-yourselfers. Tom has designed and manufactured a handful of car-related products that support his ongoing restoration addiction, which include VW Porsche engine test stands, custom Porsche 356 tow boards, and some rust repair parts. After tackling a Porsche 356 restoration, he drove into a Porsche 911, and Ahh Garage Time became a weekly restoration vlog. Cars don't need to be a money pit if you're willing to learn to do it yourself, and as well as we all know, the journey is often more fun than the destination. So, Tom, I've told our listeners just a little bit about you. Would you take a brief moment and share a little bit more about your career, your YouTube channel, and a very obvious passion for working and playing with cars?
Yes, thank you, Mark, for the opportunity to be on your show today. And I'm very honored to share my passion with you and your audience, because at the end of the day, I'm just an avid hobbyist working out of my home garage, restoring cars. And I'm very fortunate. I feel very lucky to be doing it. For whatever reason, I just seem to be attracted to projects, cars that need lots of work. And for me, that's the fun part. That's where I really enjoy the quest and the challenge and coming up with new methods. Sometimes it's a new tool, a handmade tool, or a clever method to restore a part. This is what I like to do. I don't have access to a lot of the expensive specialized equipment that some of the specialized shops have. So for me, I just want to share my experience for the typical DIYer. And along the way, I've made a few parts that I sell to subsidize my car projects. But in general, they're there to help the community. And over the years, I've been quite successful building engine test stand products that allow guys to diagnose and troubleshoot their engines outside the car. Plus, I make a few Porsche parts, like you mentioned. But recently, I started a YouTube channel, and that seems to be gaining some steam. It's where I share some secrets on how I'm restoring my own 911 on just a shoestring budget. And it's a lot of fun. It's really there to inspire other people that have the same sort of enthusiasm that I do, and just to get out and build something, especially the younger crowd who seems to be sort of losing interest of all things mechanical. So far, it's been a really fun ride.
Well, I'm really happy with what you're doing, and that's why I love sharing your story, because you're a bit of a wantrepreneur, I guess, in one way, because this is a hobby for you, but you're evolving it into a business. And I think the best part of what you're doing, Tom, is you're giving back to people. You're offering through YouTube a free service, basically, to viewers at least, a way for them to do it themselves and learn how to do it themselves and learn how to have some fun. I enjoy watching your vlog and going, I never thought about that, or things that I never thought I could tackle. You give me the sense that maybe I should tackle them and give them a try. So appreciate what you're doing. And as we continue on your journey, I always like to start with a success quote or a mantra. This is some kind of saying that's been instrumental in your success. It's a nice way to get the inspirational tires turning here on Cars Yeah. So Tom, take the wheel.
Yeah, I think for me, on a daily basis as it relates to cars, it's, when there's a will, there's a way, and it's only metal. What that means for me is I typically, I don't encourage guys to just start hacking into their classic car with, torches and saws, but, to start by making a plan. And that's really where the will part of the mantra comes in. I like to break a big project. We all want to see the final product, but I like to break it into small mini projects. And it's kind of like eating an elephant, one bite at a time.
Oh yeah.
I do lots of research.
I love that saying.
Yeah, because it's my projects, like I said earlier, are huge, huge projects. And if you don't break them down into small pieces, it becomes daunting. But I do a lot of research. I pick a method that works for me. If I'm really confident, I'll sometimes devise my own plan. I always practice first before I start just cutting away. I remember in the beginning, I was restoring a Porsche 356, and I was just so afraid to cut into it. It had a lot of rust that needed to be repaired. But as I would work on small, inconspicuous areas, just one piece at a time, I started to get more and more confident. And now I am ready just to dive right in and share my story. So, you have to be safe, and you have to think about the unintended consequences when you're really cutting into a car like that. But as long as you have a will and you have a plan and you work the plan, then usually good things come out of it. I sometimes find myself, sometimes I'll just be dreaming about a difficult repair, and I think about it so often. This is where the passion is. I'll be dreaming about this stuff. So when it comes to the day to actually execute the plan, I feel like I've already thought about most of the things that could go wrong or could go right. So I try to do a lot of research and really get into it. But in the end of the day, metal's pretty forgiving, and it allows yourself to learn a new skill and have fun doing it.
Inspiring confidence. That's what you do best. Now, you and I are Porsche guys. We both love Porsches, as my listeners know. I'm a big fan. So I'd love for you to share a story that instigated your personal passion for cars. Is there a pivotal moment in your life when you knew you were indeed a car guy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, it really starts at a pretty young age. I mean, I think I was around 8 or 9 years old. Some of you and your listeners may remember the Sears wish book. It used to come around in the mail. It's a catalog that comes in the mail around Christmas time. And I remember breakfast as a kid, and I would circle, one page had a go-kart on it. And lo and behold, one year under the Christmas tree, this thing showed up. And I remember, I was so excited. I remember driving that around in our backyard. We had a large backyard. It was quite spacious with a lot of dirt. And before you know it, I was counter steering, opposite lock, going around corners, just having the best time. And shortly thereafter, I also became interested in radio-controlled cars around the same age. And these cars were so technically advanced. I mean, even in the 80s, I really got into learning about how they work and why they work and how to set them up for racing. So I think before I was even able to drive or had a driver's license, I really had this passion for cars. And you mentioned Porsche. Well, to me, my Porsche passion is really no different than driving a go-kart. I mean, these are simple cars. They're well built with a purpose, and that's just to have fun.
Absolutely. The Sears Christmas catalog. Oh, yeah. I remember getting those and circling all the things you hoped Santa would bring you and leaving them conspicuously open around the house. So, quote unquote, Santa might see them, if you will. But you were a lucky guy to get a go-kart. Yeah, my neighbor friends and I had to make a go-kart, and I did not have a big backyard. So we were driving it up and down the street and, of course, annoying all the neighbors and probably driving it down the street into some areas that we shouldn't have been driving it. But those go-karts are quite fun. So very cool.
Yeah.
Still saying sorry to the neighbor's father whose Briggs & Stratton engine we stole off of his lawnmower to power our go-kart. Well, what I want to do now is take a look at some of the many roads you've driven down, Tom, and talk about a big challenge or a big failure. Maybe it was in launching this YouTube. Maybe it's in trying to figure all this out. I don't know, but take us to a point in time where you were challenged and tell us what that experience taught you.
Yeah, the nice thing about, my passion is it's really for me mostly a hobby. And I love all the technical challenges, and I always seem to find a way to persevere. And for me, I try to do so in a high standard. Probably the biggest challenge for me is listening to the naysayers. There's people that say, why is this taking so long? Or, I got my car painted for a couple $100. What's your problem? And, these are friends, but they're not necessarily car friends. And they just don't seem to get it sometimes. So sometimes I just have to smile and say, well, this is going to be done when it's done, and I'll just keep working on it. And that's just how I choose to spend my time. I'm socializing with people all over the world who are doing the same thing. And for me, it's just a lot of fun. It's kind of like, I think golf is a good analogy because it's no different than, hitting that little white ball with a stick and then saying, well, how come you haven't hit a hole in one yet?
Yeah, you try hitting this ball with a stick.
Yeah, it's a difficult and long-term challenge. And I always use this cliche where, you have a sort of triangle where you have the corners are labeled. You can have it fast, you can have it inexpensive, and you can have it high quality. And you can only pick two. And for me, my method is certainly on the high quality side, but inexpensive. So alternatively, that means it's not fast. And sometimes it's difficult for my non-friends to get that. And that could be a challenge sometimes to get this project finished to the finish line. I want to do it my way, and I want to do it in a high quality way. So I think that's really the summary of my challenge. It's kind of like golf.
Yeah.
You can spend your whole career and not hit a hole in one.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people these days, there are ways to put yourself out there doing vlogs, doing blogs, doing podcasts, I mean, whatever it might be. And then they meet up with the naysayers, as I call them, people who are trying to tell them that what they're doing is wrong or give their personal opinions, which sometimes are accurate, sometimes maybe they're not. And this is a good subject to maybe go a little further on. What is your opinion, or what's your experience, I should say, even better, of dealing with people who are maybe, I won't say picking on you, but let's just use that term right now that, well, what you're doing is wrong. Just take it to Earl Scheib and paint the car and be done with it. What's a good way you found to positively interact with these folks that are kind of picking on you a little bit? Because it's going to happen when you put yourself out there. Believe me, it's going to happen. And to do it in a dignified way. Are there any little tips and tricks you might offer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get lots of, feedback. Number one, people will remind me of safety. Sometimes I'm right now I'm in the phase of doing a lot of welding, and I'm pretty focused on the outcome and what the car is going to look like and how to get this particular piece put in correctly. But in some cases, I typically do a lot of TIG welding, and I'll be wearing a glove on one hand, but not the other, or it's not the right glove. Or, so people will like to be I call them the Monday morning kind of racers. They like to be the ones who want to be the know-it-all. So for the know-it-alls, I like to interact with them and be part of the community, but I also, hope to keep them sort of focused on what the product is supposed to be. And I do a lot of things in an unconventional way. As I mentioned, I don't have big punch presses and things that the professional shops do. So the way I do it is pretty different. And I like to show the methods I use because they're something that anyone can do at home in their own garage. I use a lot of hammers. I've taken parts of mine to the beach, and I've formed metal shapes for the nose of my 911, for instance. I formed some of that stuff at the beach, and I'm using the sand, and I'm using just a lot of different methods that are pretty unconventional. And for the most part, the response has been pretty positive, but some people just want to shake their heads and say, well, you should just write a check for this and drive away into the sunset. But for me, I really like the challenging aspects of how to get it done, do the research and make it work for myself.
Yeah. Well, I think for some of those folks, they're missing the point of what you're trying to do. It's kind of like saying, well, why'd you bother driving to another state? Why don't you just fly? It's a lot quicker. It's like, well, the drive is part of the journey, the fun. It's getting there, not so much the destination, as I mentioned in your introduction. So, yeah, that can be a challenge. So I always start when I deal with that with a thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your email. And sometimes just be as brief as that, because you're never going to win the argument.